The moment Sophia's champagne glass shattered against the marble floor, the entire ballroom fell silent. Her perfectly made-up face contorted in shock as she stared at the man who had just entered, the same man she had abandoned with 3 newborn babies 5 years ago. But it wasn't my disheveled appearance that stunned her. It was the tall, impeccably dressed woman beside me, whose name regularly appeared on the world's wealthiest lists, with her hand protectively on my shoulder. If you've ever wanted to witness karma unfold in real time, stick around until the end of this story. And if you enjoy tales of unexpected redemption, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that prove life has a way of balancing the scales when you least expect it. I never thought I'd be telling this story publicly. For years, it was too painful, too raw. But now I realize my journey might help others who feel trapped in impossible situations. My name is Daniel Mercer, and 5 years ago, I was just an ordinary guy with ordinary dreams. I had a steady job as a high school English teacher, a modest apartment in the suburbs, and a fiancée I thought I'd grow old with. Sophia and I had been together since college, 7 years of building what I believed was an unshakable foundation for our future. When we discovered Sophia was pregnant, I was ecstatic. Then came the ultrasound appointment that changed everything: triplets. 3 heartbeats. 3 little lives we'd created together. While I sat in stunned silence, already calculating how we'd manage on my teacher's salary, Sophia squeezed my hand and whispered, "We'll figure it out." The pregnancy was difficult. Sophia had to stop working at her marketing job earlier than planned. Money became tight. I picked up tutoring gigs on weekends and evenings, often coming home to find Sophia distant, scrolling through social media, looking at lives that seemed easier than ours was becoming. "We'll get through this," I'd tell her, massaging her swollen feet. "Once they're born, everything will fall into place." I was wrong. Emma, Lily, and Noah were born on a stormy April night after a complicated delivery. They were tiny but healthy, 3 perfect miracles with my dark hair and Sophia's green eyes. I spent that first night in the hospital chair, watching them sleep in their little clear bassinets, overwhelmed with love and terror in equal measure. Sophia didn't share my wonder. She was withdrawn, barely holding the babies, flinching when they cried. The nurses called it baby blues. I told myself it would pass. 2 weeks after we brought the triplets home, I woke to find Sophia standing over their cribs at 3 a.m., tears streaming down her face. "I can't do this, Daniel," she whispered. "This isn't the life I wanted." I held her, promised we'd get more help, suggested therapy. She nodded, and I thought the crisis had passed. The next morning, I found her note on the kitchen counter. "I'm sorry. I'm not meant to be a mother. They deserve better than me. Please don't try to find me." Next to the note was her engagement ring. The following days passed in a blur of diapers, formula, and sleepless nights. My parents came to help, but they were older and couldn't stay indefinitely. Friends dropped by with casseroles and sympathetic glances, but eventually, they returned to their own lives. I took an emergency leave from teaching, draining my modest savings to hire a part-time nanny while I figured out what to do. Sophia had simply vanished. Her parents, who had always thought she was settling with me, claimed they didn't know where she'd gone. Her social media accounts went dark. It was as if she'd erased not just me, but her own children from her life completely. 6 months in, I was drowning. The triplets were thriving, but I was barely surviving. My leave from work was ending, the savings were gone, and the part-time help wasn't enough for 3 babies. I sat on the floor of the nursery one night, listening to Emma's soft snores, Lily's gentle sighs, and Noah's occasional whimpers, and I broke down. "I can't lose you," I whispered to them. "But I don't know how to keep you, either." The next day, I made the hardest phone call of my life, to social services. I needed help, resources, anything to keep my family together. The woman who answered, Margaret Wilson, heard the desperation in my voice. "Mr. Mercer," she said gently, "before we discuss anything drastic, I'd like you to meet someone." 2 days later, Margaret arrived at my apartment with an elegant woman in her 50s. She introduced herself as Eleanor Blackwood, the director of a foundation that supported single parents in crisis. "Margaret tells me you're determined to keep your children," Eleanor said, surveying the chaos of my living room with kind eyes. "That's rarer than you might think." As the triplets napped, I told Eleanor everything: Sophia's abandonment, my financial struggles, my fear of failing these 3 innocent lives who depended on me completely. Eleanor listened without judgment. When I finished, she made me an unusual offer. "My foundation has a residence program for situations like yours. A house on my property with childcare support while you work. In exchange, we ask that you contribute to our community programs when you can, perhaps tutoring some of our other families' children." It sounded too good to be true. "Why would you do this for a stranger?" I asked. Eleanor's eyes grew distant. "Because 30 years ago, I was a single mother with twins and nowhere to turn. Someone gave me a chance. I'm simply paying it forward." I moved into the guest house on Eleanor's estate the following week. It was a charming cottage with room for the triplets to grow, situated on the edge of her sprawling property. The childcare center was a short walk away, staffed by professionals who genuinely loved children. Eleanor, I soon learned, had built her fortune in tech before turning to philanthropy. Widowed young and childless after her twins died in a car accident with their father, she had dedicated her considerable resources to supporting families in crisis. Her foundation helped dozens of single parents get back on their feet each year. I returned to teaching, started an online master's program in education administration, and slowly rebuilt my life around my children. The triplets thrived in this unexpected environment, surrounded by other children and adults who cared for them. Eleanor became a fixture in our lives, not intrusive, but present, a benevolent guardian angel who seemed to appear whenever a crisis loomed. By the time Emma, Lily, and Noah turned 3, we had settled into a comfortable routine. I had completed my master's and been promoted to department head at my school. We still lived in Eleanor's guest house, but I was saving for our own place, determined to stand on my own feet while never forgetting the hand that had helped me up. Then came the invitation to my 10-year college reunion. I almost threw it away. College meant memories of Sophia, of the life I'd planned that had shattered so completely. But something made me mention it to Eleanor during one of our weekly dinners. "You should go," she said, watching the triplets chase fireflies in her garden. "Show your classmates the remarkable father you've become." "I don't need validation," I replied. Eleanor's gaze was steady. "Perhaps not. But sometimes, closing a chapter properly allows us to fully embrace the next one." I knew she was right. For all my focus on moving forward, I had never truly confronted the past. I had shielded myself from it, throwing all my energy into the triplets and my career. Maybe it was time to face it head-on. The reunion was being held at an upscale hotel in the city where Sophia and I had once planned to build our life. Eleanor insisted on watching the triplets for the weekend, giving me a rare break. "Go," she said. "Reconnect with old friends. Remember who you were before you became Dad." The night of the reunion, I stood in front of the mirror in my hotel room, barely recognizing myself. 5 years of single parenthood had added some gray to my temples and lines around my eyes, but they had also given me a confidence I'd never possessed in college. I was no longer the uncertain young man who had once been so desperate for Sophia's approval. I was a father, a teacher, a survivor. I arrived at the ballroom fashionably late, picking up my name tag and a glass of champagne before scanning the room. Many faces were familiar, aged versions of the people I'd once spent my days with. Some called out greetings, surprised and pleased to see me. I made small talk, shared photos of the triplets, accepted congratulations on my professional achievements. And then I saw her. Sophia stood across the room, more beautiful than ever in a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Her hair was shorter, highlighted expensively, and she was laughing at something said by the woman beside her, a striking blonde whose diamond bracelet caught the light with every gesture. My heart didn't race as I'd feared it might. Instead, I felt a strange calm, as if I was observing a stranger who had once been important to me. I might have simply avoided her all night if our former roommate, Jason, hadn't spotted me and dragged me over for what he clearly thought would be a happy reunion. "Look who I found hiding by the bar," Jason announced, pushing me forward. Sophia's laughter died on her lips. She paled, then quickly composed herself. "Daniel," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Clearly," I replied, keeping my tone light. An awkward silence fell until the blonde beside Sophia extended her hand. "I'm Victoria Chambers," she said. Sophia's partner. The name was vaguely familiar, old money, I thought, or perhaps finance. "Daniel Mercer," I replied. Sophia's ex-fiancée. Victoria's perfectly shaped eyebrow arched. "Ah, the teacher," she said, with just enough inflection to make it sound like the peasant. Sophia at least had the grace to look uncomfortable. "How have you been, Daniel?" "I've been well," I said simply. "Teaching, raising the kids, working on my doctorate now." The mention of the triplets caused Sophia to flinch visibly. Victoria looked between us, clearly connecting dots. "The children," she said slowly. "You kept them?" The surprise in her voice made my skin crawl. What had Sophia told her? That she'd left them with relatives? Put them up for adoption? "Of course I kept them," I said, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "They're my children." Victoria's laugh was like glass breaking, sharp and dangerous. "How quaint. And how do you manage on a teacher's salary? 3 children must be expensive." Before I could answer, Sophia jumped in, clearly eager to change the subject. "Daniel was always resourceful. I'm sure he's making it work." She turned to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Are they here in the city with you?" The question stunned me. After 5 years of complete silence, not a birthday card, not a child support check, not even a text asking if they were alive, she was asking as if she'd simply been away on a business trip. "No," I said coldly. "They're with their grandmother for the weekend." It wasn't exactly a lie. Eleanor was the closest thing to a grandmother they had, given that my parents had passed away 2 years earlier and Sophia's had never acknowledged the triplets' existence. Victoria's phone chimed, and she glanced at it with obvious relief. "Darling, the Andersons are waiting for us at Lumiere. We should go." She gave me a dismissive nod. "Nice to meet you, David." "Daniel," I corrected, but she was already turning away. Sophia hesitated. For a moment, I thought I saw regret in her eyes. "They look like me?" she asked quietly. "They have your eyes," I admitted. "But thankfully, they have my loyalty." She flinched as if I'd slapped her. "You don't understand what it was like," she whispered. I wasn't ready. "Neither was I," I replied. "But they didn't ask to be born, Sophia. They needed us, and only one of us showed up." Victoria called impatiently from a few feet away. Sophia straightened her shoulders, her vulnerability vanishing behind a mask of indifference. "Well, I'm glad it worked out for you," she said briskly. "Playing house with 3 kids. Very noble." The dismissal in her tone ignited something in me. 5 years of silent struggle, of nights spent worrying how I'd provide for 3 children alone, of explaining to toddlers why they didn't have a mommy like other kids, it all boiled to the surface. "They're not a game I'm playing, Sophia. They're human beings. Our children. And every day you miss with them is your loss, not theirs." She laughed then, a brittle sound that drew glances from nearby classmates. "My loss? Look at me, Daniel. Look at my life." She gestured to her expensive dress, to Victoria waiting impatiently. "And look at you. Still the same idealistic teacher, probably living paycheck to paycheck, buried in diapers and children's books. Tell me honestly, who made the better choice? The cruelty of the question left me speechless. Before I could recover, Victoria rejoined us, slipping a possessive arm around Sophia's waist. The Andersons won't wait forever, darling. They're closing the restaurant just for us. She gave me a pitying look. You'll have to excuse us. Early meetings tomorrow with some dreary investors. I should have walked away then. Should have let them go with their designer clothes and reservation at the city's most exclusive restaurant. But something in me couldn't let Sophia's question hang unanswered. You asked who made the better choice, I said quietly. The answer is simple. I wake up every morning to 3 little people who love me unconditionally. Who think I hang the moon and stars. Who are growing into kind, thoughtful human beings despite missing half their genetic heritage. I looked directly at Sophia. What do you wake up to? Victoria's laugh was sharp. She wakes up in a penthouse overlooking Central Park, wearing silk pajamas that cost more than your monthly rent. She vacations in places you can't pronounce and dines with people you read about in magazines. She tightened her grip on Sophia's waist. I'd say she chose well. I was about to respond when a familiar voice called my name. I turned to see Eleanor Blackwood striding across the ballroom, elegant as always in a simple black dress, her silver hair swept into a chignon. Several people turned to stare. Eleanor's face regularly appeared in business magazines and philanthropy features. Daniel, there you are, she said warmly, reaching me and pressing a kiss to my cheek. I'm so sorry to interrupt your reunion, but there's been a slight situation at home. My heart dropped. The triplets? Are they okay? Eleanor smiled reassuringly. They're perfectly fine. Emma just had a nightmare and is insisting she won't sleep until she talks to her daddy. I have her on FaceTime in the car. She glanced at her watch. If we hurry, we can get the other 2 to bed at a reasonable hour. You know how Noah gets when his routine is disrupted. I nodded, relief washing over me. Of course. Let me just say goodbye. I turned back to find Sophia and Victoria staring at Eleanor with undisguised shock. Victoria recovered first, extending her hand. Eleanor Blackwood, she said, her voice suddenly honeyed. What an unexpected pleasure. I'm Victoria Chambers. My family's foundation collaborated with yours on the Children's Hospital wing last year. Eleanor shook her hand briefly. Ah, yes. The Chambers Foundation. Your contribution was adequate. She turned to Sophia with a coolly assessing gaze. And you are? Sophia seemed to shrink under Eleanor's scrutiny. Sophia Reeves. I used to know Daniel. Did you? Eleanor's tone could have frozen fire. How interesting. Daniel has never mentioned you. The lie was kind in its cruelty. Of course Eleanor knew exactly who Sophia was. She had held me through countless nights when memories of Sophia's abandonment had overwhelmed me, had listened patiently as I questioned what I could have done differently, had gently helped me understand that some people simply aren't equipped for parenthood, and that it wasn't my fault. Victoria, sensing a networking opportunity slipping away, jumped in. We were just telling Daniel how impressed we are that he's managing as a single father. Such a challenging situation. Eleanor's smile didn't reach her eyes. There's nothing challenging about loving those children. They're extraordinary. But then, Daniel is an extraordinary father, so it's hardly surprising. She checked her watch again. Daniel, we really should go. Emma's waiting, and you know how persistent she can be. Just like her father, I said with a smile, grateful for the rescue. As I turned to leave, Sophia reached out, touching my arm. Daniel, wait. Her voice had lost its brittle edge. Your children, they're with Eleanor Blackwood? I looked at her hand until she withdrew it.